Family members were blaming each other. Dr. Phil was trying to mediate. And then the grandfather, sitting quietly in the corner, started to speak. And the first sentence he said changed everything. "That's not the real story. It never was." The studio froze. Dr. Phil turned. The camera operators adjusted their angles. The family members, a daughter, a son, a daughter-in-law, all stopped mid-argument and stared at the elderly man who'd barely said a word since walking onto the stage 20 minutes earlier. His name was Robert. 78 years old. Silver hair. Deep lines around his eyes that spoke of decades of carrying something heavy. He'd sat through the entire segment in silence while his children and grandchildren accused each other of destroying the family. Of lying. Of manipulation. Of selfishness. He'd listened. Hadn't interrupted. Hadn't defended anyone. Just sat there with his hands folded, watching his family tear itself apart. Until that moment. Until something inside him broke. Or maybe finally healed enough to speak. Dr. Phil had been hosting this show for 30 years. He'd seen every variation of family dysfunction. Parents who abandoned children. Children who stole from parents. Siblings who hadn't spoken in decades. He'd mediated, confronted, called out lies, demanded accountability. He had a process. A rhythm. A way of navigating the chaos people brought into his studio. But when Robert stood up, slowly, like standing required all the energy he had left, and said those words, Dr. Phil's process stopped. Because there was something in the old man's voice. Not anger. Not defensiveness. Just exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying truth for so long it started to crush you. "Robert," Dr. Phil said carefully. "What do you mean that's not the real story?" The daughter, Sarah, 46 years old, shot to her feet. "Dad, don't." "We agreed. We don't talk about." "Sit down, Sarah." Robert's voice was quiet but firm. The voice of a father who'd spent decades being obeyed. Sarah sat. Her brother looked between them, confused. The daughter-in-law gripped her purse tighter. Robert looked at Dr. Phil. "They came here today to talk about why this family is broken. Why nobody trusts each other. Why holidays end in screaming matches. Why my grandchildren don't speak to their cousins. They'd been blaming each other for 45 minutes. And they're all wrong." Dr. Phil gestured to the chair. "Tell me." Robert shook his head. "I can't sit for this. I've been sitting with this for 43 years. I need to stand." The audience had gone completely silent. Even the production assistants had stopped moving. Dr. Phil nodded. Let the old man have his moment. Whatever this was, it had been building for decades. "My wife, Margaret. She died 11 years ago. Cancer. And before she died, she made me promise something. She made me promise I'd never tell the kids the truth. She said it would destroy them. That it was better they had their anger and their blame than knowing what really happened." Dr. Phil paused mid-sentence. The studio went completely silent. Sarah's face had gone pale. "Dad, please, no." Robert's voice cracked. "No more protecting. No more lying. Your mother was wrong. The truth is destroying them anyway. Just slower. I see it. I watched my children hate each other over something they don't even understand. And I'm done." He turned to face his children. All three of them. Sarah in her expensive suit, probably came straight from work. Michael, his son, in jeans and a flannel shirt, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Jennifer, the daughter-in-law, who'd married into this mess and never quite understood why every family gathering felt like walking on broken glass. "You all think the problem started when your mother had her breakdown. When she was hospitalized. When I had to take over raising you three by myself for 6 months. You've built this whole narrative around that time. About how I failed you. How your mother abandoned you. How the family was never the same." Michael stood up now too. "Because it's true. You sent us to live with Aunt Carol. You barely visited. Mom came back but she was different. distant. We were 11, 9, and 7 years old, Dad. We needed you and you weren't there. Robert's eyes filled with tears. Dr. Phil watched the old man's hands shake. Watched him gather himself. This was costing him everything. Your mother didn't have a breakdown, Robert said. Each word deliberate. Heavy. She tried to kill herself. And the reason she tried to kill herself is because I had an affair. With her sister. Your Aunt Carol. The studio erupted. Not with sound. With the absence of it. Sarah's hand went to her mouth. Michael sat back down like his legs had given out. Jennifer just stared. Dr. Phil stood up, moved closer, ready to intervene if this went sideways. We were having problems. Robert continued, voice shaking but steady. Your mother was struggling with postpartum depression after Jennifer was born. This was 1980. Nobody talked about that stuff. Doctors just said some women get sad after babies and sent you home. She was drowning and I didn't know how to help her. So I pulled away. Started working longer hours. And Carol was there. She'd come over to help with you kids. And one thing led to another and he couldn't finish. Didn't need to. Your mother found out. Found letters. And she broke. Completely broke. She took an entire bottle of pills. I found her in the bathroom. Called 911. They pumped her stomach. Saved her life. But she couldn't come home. Not to the house where it happened. Not to me. Not to Carol, who we'd have to explain to you kids was suddenly banned from our lives. Sarah was crying now. Silent tears running down her face. You told us she had a nervous breakdown. That she needed rest. That Aunt Carol was helping. Because that's what Margaret wanted. She didn't want you to know she tried to leave you. She didn't want you to know what I'd done. She wanted to protect you from the truth. So we lied. We sent you to Carol's house because your mother couldn't bear to see her sister. We told you Mom needed time in a hospital for her nerves. And when she came back 6 months later, medicated and hollow, we told you she was better. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He walked to the edge of the stage. Signaled to the control room. Cut the cameras. Stop recording. Now. The red lights went off. The audience sat stunned. Dr. Phil turned to the family. What happens next needs to happen without cameras. Robert, sit down. Sarah, Michael, Jennifer, you too. We're going to talk. Really talk. But not for television. For you. Robert looked at Dr. Phil with such relief it was heartbreaking. Thank you. The crew cleared the stage area. Gave the family space. Dr. Phil sat with them. No microphones. No cameras. Just a psychologist and 4 people trying to process a revelation that had been buried for over 4 decades. What was said in those 20 minutes off camera was never recorded. Never shared. But when the cameras came back on, everything had changed. Sarah was sitting next to her father, holding his hand. Michael was crying openly. Jennifer looked shell-shocked but was nodding as Dr. Phil spoke. We're going to take a different approach, Dr. Phil said to the camera. This family has been operating under false information for 43 years. They've been blaming each other for things that weren't anyone's fault. Or were one person's fault but got distributed across everyone. And now they know the truth. And the truth is hard. But it's also the beginning of actual healing. He turned to Robert. You carried this alone for over 4 decades. That's not strength. That's slow suicide. Your wife was trying to protect your children from pain. But secrets don't protect. They poison. Robert nodded. I know that now. Dr. Phil looked at Sarah. Your mother's mental health crisis wasn't about you. Her distance afterward wasn't rejection. It was shame and medication and trauma she never processed. Your father's absence wasn't neglect. It was a man drowning in guilt trying to hold together a family he'd helped break. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. I spent 30 years angry at them. Both of them. And now? Now I understand. I don't know if I forgive, but I understand. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Dr. Phil pulled something from his jacket pocket. A small business card. He handed it to Robert. This is a family therapist who specializes in complex trauma and long-term family dysfunction. You're all going to call her together. Because knowing the truth is step 1. Learning how to rebuild from it is the rest of the journey. He handed identical cards to each family member. Your mother wanted to protect you from pain, but she's gone now. And Robert has given you something she couldn't. The truth. What you do with that truth defines what happens next. Michael spoke for the first time since the revelation. I don't know how to process this. My whole understanding of my childhood just collapsed. Good, Dr. Phil said. Not cruelly. Firmly. Because your understanding was built on a lie. A well-intentioned lie, but a lie. Now you can build understanding on truth. It's harder. It's messier. But it's real. But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. From the audience, an elderly woman stood up. Maybe 70. She was crying but raised her hand. Dr. Phil nodded to her. I did the same thing, she said. Her voice shook. 50 years ago. Protected my children from the truth about why their father left. Told them he died in an accident. He didn't. He left us for another woman, and I was so ashamed I couldn't tell them. They found out when they were adults. From a cousin. And they've never forgiven me. Not for their father leaving. For lying. She looked at Robert. You did the right thing. Telling them. Even if it's 40 years late. I wish I'd had your courage. The studio was utterly silent. Dr. Phil looked at the woman. Then at Robert. Then at the cameras. This is what shame does, he said. It makes us think protecting people from truth is love. But love without truth isn't protection. It's isolation. It's making people navigate their lives with false maps. And when they finally discover the real terrain, they're lost and angry and don't know who to trust. He turned back to Robert. What made you decide to finally speak? Robert's answer was simple. Devastating. I'm 78 years old. I have maybe 10 years left if I'm lucky. And I realized I was going to die with my children hating each other over a lie. I couldn't do it. I couldn't take it to my grave. Dr. Phil nodded. And your wife? Margaret? If she were here now, what would she say? Robert closed his eyes. Thought. I think she'd be relieved. I think she carried the lie because she thought she had to. But I don't think she wanted to. I think it killed her a little more every year. The cancer might have taken her body, but the secret ate away at her soul long before that. The cameras captured Sarah reaching for her father's hand again. Michael moving his chair closer. Jennifer putting her hand on her husband's shoulder. Small gestures. But gestures that hadn't happened in this family for 43 years. Dr. Phil stood. Looked at the family. Then at the camera. Truth doesn't fix everything. But lies guarantee nothing gets fixed. This family has a long road ahead. Therapy. Conversations. Grief for the mother who carried a secret that wasn't hers to carry alone. Grief for the childhood they thought they had. But now they can walk that road together. With truth. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Robert kept that business card. Called the therapist 2 days later. His children joined him. They're still in therapy. Still processing. Still learning who they actually are to each other now that the lie is gone. It's not healed. It may never fully heal. But it's real, and Robert, at 78, learned that courage isn't carrying weight alone. It's setting it down. Even when you've carried it so long you've forgotten what it feels like to stand up straight.